talk show animal. You're like one of those goddamn creatures out of Greek mythology. Half man, half desk.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Oilfield Leader. Today, we are incredibly blessed to have Mikel Bowman of Bowman Legacies and author of really an amazing book, Lead from the Middle. Could you please tell me what happened that one night that you got this phone call from one of your workers?
Absolutely. It's Michael, by the way.
Michael, I'm sorry, Michael.
No, it's all good. Well, so I was working for a pretty fast moving company, and it got to where, foremen and people are flying so fast in and out the door. It was just so difficult and almost impossible to keep everybody's contact information in your phone. And my phone rang at 3 a.m. Everybody that works with me knows that, hey, that phone's by my bed for a reason. And we were working coast to coast too. So, we had guys getting off work at my 3 a.m. You know what I mean? Because we're hot seating equipment. We're working double shifts and 6 to 7 days a week. So that phone is there because I know what it's like to be in the AM and be on a site where you watch the sun rise and set and rise again on the same shift.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I know what that's like, covered in hammer oil and limestone dust. And so I sympathize with my people because I've been there. I felt it. I know what it's like. And if no one's going to support them, I am. So that's the kind of guy I am. My phone's by my bed and the phone rings at 3 a.m. and I don't have the contact information in my phone. But I can tell it's a California area code. So I'm thinking it's California. My guys are getting off work. This is not spam. I answer it. And I said, hey, it's 3 a.m. I'm groggy, but I'm here. What do you need? What can I do? And I don't hear anything in the background. And I can just hear background noise, but I've got experience in that non-for-profit space. And what I learned as being a counselor in that non-for-profit space is sometimes you got to listen for things that people aren't actually saying. And you've got to have a listener's ear if you're going to lead on a high level. You've got to hear what people aren't saying. You've got to listen and observe and see what's actually going on in the background of this person's life. So I learned to do that over the phone with my guys, and I started listening and I could hear highway noise. And I knew for a fact that there was no highway where I could hear on the mountain on the site where we were at. There is a highway, but it's not close enough that you could hear it. Mm-hmm. And so I began to listen even more and I could hear rain. So I know this guy's outside, he's standing in the rain. And then I could hear air conditioning units kicking on and off. And I was like, this guy's in an AC unit. He's in a mechanical room. I can hear the sound bouncing off of concrete walls. And I realized I know where he is. He's in our apartments that we're paying for. He has scaled the mechanical wall and now he's behind it, which means with that listener ear keys me to understand he's hidden himself. Something bad has happened and now he's hiding. And so I just again said, hey, if you know me, I'm there for you. What's going on? And in the background, again, I could hear sobbing. And through time, the conversation, him finally opening up, I realized I had a suicidal coworker who's hidden himself and he has a live firearm in his hand and he's ready to take his life. And what he told me was, he's like, I just want to talk to the one person I knew that loved me before I do this. So that's a very awkward place to be set.
Wow.
Because I'm in the Midwest and he's in California. Yeah. There's not a damn thing I can do. I can't stop him. I can't sway him. And I know if there's an ounce of untruth in what I say to him, I get a front row seat to hearing him relieve his skull of his brains. And what matters worse, because I am an outdoorsman and I have been trained in firearm safety, I could hear the semi-automatic handgun engage a live round into the chamber. And as he's talking to me back and forth, I can hear the teeth chattering against the barrel of the firearm. So no pressure.
And he chose to call you.
He chose to call me.
And what did you tell him?
Well, I don't want to divulge too much and give away too much for the book, but I will tell you that it was through the relationship that I had with him and having those one-way tickets to California and having to fix a very complicated site, working side by side with him as an executive and getting in the dirt with him and getting muddy and him seeing me firsthand actually show him that I cared about him is why he called me. And I think one of the most important things to understand, and we lose this because I've been the driller's helper,
Mhm.
raking holes and doing things. I've been the hod carrier. And for those of you who know, you know what that means. That means you're the grunt man on a stone operation and you're mixing mortar and you're carrying rocks from one place to another. You know, you're carrying concrete blocks. It's not a extravagant job and you don't need a lot of brain power to do it.
Right.
And then I've also been in that executive role. And a lot of the times we forget the pain our people go through. And I refuse to do that. I just refuse to do that. And that's just kind of been my template in life. And we've made a business out of it. Refusing to forget what these people do to sacrifice to build our dreams for us. And that's where we get lost a lot of the times. And that's what got lost at this organization that I was at. We got lost, or some of the people got lost on the importance of the people that link shields with us. They got lost and forgot what it's like to be there. And some of them had never been there. So they're making decisions based upon solely what the book says for them to do, right? What college said for them to do, with absolutely no background, no experience, no heart and soul, no nothing. And then they're pushing these initiatives on people that was absolutely wearing them out and killing their mental health. So, yeah, without divulging too much of the book,
All right.
there you are.
But see, and that's one of the problems also that we see in the oil field is that when people, they work really hard, again, like you say, you guys are doing mining. We're very similar, right, in mining and extraction. Oh. So it's very, adjacent and very similar, which is one of the reasons why you have the moral authority also to come on this show and discuss this topic, because you know what hard physical labor is like in extreme conditions, and seeing the sunrise, sunset, and sunrise in the same shift. We've done that many times. But a lot of people in positions of leadership or positions of management, they do think that they know how things should be done, but they don't spend any time in the field. They don't even spend one shift with their guys. And how can you presume to tell someone to do something if you've never done it yourself? And then refuse to listen when people tell you, well, it's really like this and it's really like that, and it's not quite as easy as you think. But that disconnect also, it aids to alienation, and as you say, and mental stress for people who are operators who are working in the field.
Yeah.
How do you express, because sometimes, when we're working 14 days on or 21 or more, it can be very soul sucking. How do you offer hope to people when they feel like that and when it's always the same? How do you express that to people?
I think I come at this in two angles. So if you're the type of person who wants to bring hope and you want to be that member of the team that can help people who are right beside you working those hours and doing those things, and be the light, man. Always have a winning attitude. The greatest thing that a losing team can have is someone with a winning attitude. And there's just no end of what you can do just with that mindset of just going, you know what? Today's going to be a great day. And you're always going to have that Eeyore that doesn't matter if the weather's beautiful and everything's going just right and everything's just beautiful that day. He's still going to find, or she's still going to find something that's bad, right? It's so sunny and beautiful. Oh yeah, I forgot my sunglasses,
Right.
It's blinding out here. It doesn't matter. But the bulk of your team will appreciate that positive attitude in time, especially if it's backed up with forward thinking and you being there in the muck and the mud and the mess consistently. This is the biggest part for you as a leader. There's a difference between manager and leader. Manager just kind of keeps all the cogs in order and he makes sure things get done. But a leader brings people along for the ride. A leader inspires, a leader empowers, a leader guides. And what you've got to understand, if that's the person you're inspiring to be in life, then you got to have that winning attitude. Now, for those of you that are in the trenches and maybe you aren't the leader so much per se, which I think everybody's a leader. Okay. You're leading your own life. You're leading your kids. You're leading your family. You're leading the direction that you're going through this universe. But if you're not paid to be the leader, I'm going to tell you the same thing for you. Winning attitude. When I was deep entrenched in the blue collar world, I never saw the value in reading books or listening to things on Audible. But the greatest thing happened to me, road time. I had a job where I was covering 6 states. I put 100,000 miles on a brand new 2500 HD in less than a year. In less than a year. Okay. So over 100,000 miles.
Holy cow.
Yeah. In less than a year. Wow. And I was on the road all the time, to say the very least. And so when I was working that job, I listened to I started listening to Joe Rogan like crazy, but then he inspired me to listen to other things and to learn and to grow more. And then I started listening to Ed Milet an awful lot. And Ed's always got something positive to say. He's a big muscled up guy, but he's also at one point in his time, his earlier podcast, there was an F word in every sentence, and I could get down with that. It's like, this is a guy who's loaded and he's made it, but at the same time, he's been in the trenches and he knows what it's like to be me. I can relate. And I started learning all kinds of stuff during that time. And when you're in equipment all the time, I was in equipment all the time. And instead of filling my head with just garbage, I filled my head with encouragement. Even stuff that was a little bit more maybe out of my mental space. It was a little bit heady, and I was like, okay, I don't really get everything they're saying right now, but I'm trying to get down with it and challenge myself. So if you're in those trenches, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself every day to grow, because here's the thing, especially if you've got kids, your kids need a better version of you every day.
Right.
They need a better version of you, and they don't owe you anything because they didn't ask to be here. You brought them here.
Right.
And so when you're that type of person, you've got those people influencing your family, be better. Just focus on being better. Be a better version of you every single day. And I'm going to tell you that helps you get through life a lot better, especially when that sun rises, sets, and rises again. Especially when your wife, when you get home, she looks at you and says, you're undressing on the front porch. Because that's happened to me a lot of times. Everything you're wearing is going in the wash right now.
Right now. Yes. Yes. Many times I've had to leave all the clothes in the garage because there's no way I would bring all that toxicity into my actual home. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
You're absolutely right. Especially if we have children, because they're not just expecting from you today, they're expecting from you in the future. And you need to be that person who knows how to answer, has the right answer, and knows how to explain that answer when the moment comes. And we can only do that by being more attuned ourselves to being better every day. And I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Well, let me ask you, how does the role of faith play in your personal life and how you transmit your message out to people when you talk to them?
Well, I always say, eat the meat and spit out the bones of what I'm saying, because I'm not trying to sell a religion,
No,
and I think there's a lot of people who, like, when they balance that out, they don't have any balance there. They're just assuming everybody believes the way you do. And I know that's just not the way it is. I've worked coast to coast. I've been DC Metro one day and then have to end my week in San Jose, California. And you meet a kaleidoscope of people. And I just love that diversity. But for me, my faith gives me an express command to love people right where they're at and to extol grace, the same type of grace that is supposedly given to me. And so I want to be that person who's consistently doing that, because where I'm at, it's an idea, it's a command, right? And command is stark.
Yeah.
When you're working, there are rules, right, that are a little loosey-goosey. You learn something in the meeting and then you get out in the field and it's a different world out there, right?
Right.
And so you're trying your hard to leverage those things and do what's right. For me, it's a command. A command is different. There's no loosey-goosey to that. And so sometimes I walk the line of that really well, and sometimes I don't, but it's all about getting back on the path when I don't. And for me, in everything that I do and everything I say, it's about love. It's about grace. And even if it's a hard subject, I'm bringing it forward with respect and love, because for me, like, if you're yelling at me in traffic, you're going to get it all back. You know what I mean? I don't do well with people yelling at me, and I know you don't either. And
Right.
so I figure it's best if I bring that love and package it, because I found an amazing truth to it. Because I lived a life of violence. I lived a life of absolutely being the type of person that if you talk to me in a angry, violent manner, I was the guy that would check you on it. I was the guy that, if you want to do this, I'm good, I'm down.
Right.
And it's because I was full of a lot of fear and a lot of anger and a lot of hurt. And what healed all that hurt was my faith. And so it has to be that chief cornerstone and the motives of what I do, because I really found, like, and we were talking about this earlier, as generic and as weird as it sounds, I found love is the answer.
Yeah.
Because there's no fear in love. And just loving people right where they're at. So many people come to our job sites and they feel so uncared for, so unloved, and they're carrying such a weight. And I really honestly believe, because I was that guy, I've been suicidal. I know what it was like to be that guy in that AC unit. I know what the barrel of a firearm tastes like in my mouth. And just being honest,
Right.
I know.
Right.
And I want to be the person who can go in there and save that person and help that person, because I am that person.
To be able to recognize that and to draw the strength to be able to help others is a tremendous turn, because who can help you when you're trying to help others? And you have to be self-reliant, and you have to be very fortunate to have family that loves you, but it only works with love. And you're absolutely right. In the oil field and mining and extraction, everything is very heavy, everything is very cold, and every mistake is very expensive. And
Yes.
love is not a word that you hear in the oil field, but it's mandatory, because when we have safety meetings, I love when we pray, and I love when we say at the end, "I am my brother's keeper."
Yeah.
You know, you
No
can even see
greater love is there than a man who lays his life down for his brother.
There you go. There you go.
And we see that all the time in the mining industry. We see that in civil construction. We see that in oil fields. We see that everywhere. I mean, look at the Hoover Dam. How many guys just reckless abandon, putting their life on the line to save other people. Look in the mine shafts when they collapse. All those things were men who maybe didn't even like each other.
Right.
They didn't even get along, but they're
Right.
risking their lives for one another.
Yeah.
You know, we really, I'm going to be honest, we crap on the blue collar world in this country.
Yeah, we do.
We've just crapped all over it, and Hollywood and our own government has done a lot just to make it look like if you didn't go to college and you didn't wear a suit and tie, that all of a sudden you don't have value. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, during COVID, who went back to work? Right?
Right.
You guys in the oil field, if you're listening, you went back to work. That was a Tuesday. They were like, "Hey, everybody, social distancing. Everybody wears the mask.
Right.
Okay. And you're all going to work from home, except for you guys in the oil field. You're getting your ass back to work."
Go. Right. Yep.
Right. Those are heroes. You guys are heroes. You need to see yourself in the light that you actually are, because the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, the world can't work. Our world can't work without you. Infrastructural work like mining, civil construction, and the oil field, our boys and girls in blue, those first responders, those nurses, let me tell you something. You guys are the heroes. Not the country singer, not the movie star, not the rock singer, not the pop singer, none of these people. And they've elevated themselves so high as if to say that they're really something. I would love for the Super Bowl halftime show to be a highlight of the blue collar world, instead of the focus on some mega star.
Right.
Because really they mean nothing to me. I would much rather be sitting in a bar with you talking shit about your day than I ever would to sit in a room with Beyonce and even hear a word she has to say. Now, she might be a great gal, okay?
Right.
But I'd rather be with you, because you guys are the true heroes.
Yeah. The world is very far removed from the blue collar world that actually gets it done, and municipal workers as well, city government. And
Absolutely.
I want to give it up to municipal workers as well, as I used to be one. So I recognize the difficulty in that. No, and what's really funny is just the hypocrisy that people don't realize, that without oil and gas and the mining and extractions, we don't have things like plastics. So you don't even have a bloody iPhone if it isn't for people going out
Yeah.
there risking their fingers every day trying to get it done and more, right?
You don't have toothpaste. You don't have drywall. You don't have Wheaties. You don't have, believe it or not, limestone is in all of those things.
Yeah, there you go.
And without oil and gas, you don't have anything moving forward. Literally.
No.
Nothing.
Nothing, right? Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly. So when we're working out in the field, I frequently say, obviously we go into these kinds of professions for the money. Obviously, we don't go out there for God and country. But when we're on pad, when we're on location, we're not thinking about the money. I'm thinking about my coworker. I'm thinking about that guy on that third party. I see that he's backing up the truck, but he doesn't see that there's a giant. He didn't see that they had excavated a pit right behind. So you just go running to stop him, from going over. Telling someone, hey, where's your safety glasses? Right? Hey, go put your PPE.
Yeah, we're hard hat.
Where's your hard hat? Right? Because you can't afford to let your brother go. You can't afford to let your brother go because you need your brother to be caring for you too. And that's something that, like you say, once you get into certain levels of government or stardom, then it's all about you, and not about the team that gets it done. And I think that that's one of the crazy things that gets lost.
I agree. What, a biggest part of my platform, what I'm trying to do is empower people right where they're at and start a revolution. I really believe that. There's a difference between rebellion and revolution. Rebellions are squashed, but revolutions change the course of history. And that's really what I want to do. I want to empower blue collar people to understand you've been lied to, bud. Hun, you've been lied to. And we are much more important and we're stronger together. We're so much stronger together. I don't even have to like you to link shields with you, but by golly, I'm going to do that hard hat thing, or, hey, where's your safety glasses? Where's your, ear protection, gloves, the whole deal, whatever the case may be, or looking out for you in such a way, because I want you going home. I want you going home.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand that kind of mentality in our governments, unfortunately, and in the executive teams, because a lot of them haven't even served or haven't served in the military.
Right.
And that's even a bigger, example of that. I love our country so much. I love that red, white, and blue, that we've not been perfect. But what nation can you put down that says, hey, everything they've done was just a great idea? Right. So right. I still love my nation, and I love my fellow man. And no matter what the good Lord packaged you in, I feel like, hey, we're here for one another. We're all in this together. And, we talk about that love stuff, but I'm going to tell you too, I want to add this. Love is not a wishy-washy thing, because there's accountability is one of the chief cornerstones to love. Right. So It isn't all about, hey, we're all here together. Right. It is so perfect. No, there's rules, there's regulations of what we do. There's a thing called discipline, which is the Latin of discipline or disciplinos, which is a military term, which simply means to teach, to train, to guide. So that's just that other side of that love too. And I think that we skew that, because in our industry, we're seeing a movement now, and it's great. We're having that revolution, but there's got to be balance to it too. And, we have to be growing together to see that. We see a lot of influencers now with not a lot of balance to what they're saying. And so I want you guys that are listening to be careful who you listen to, be careful who do you watch, and realize, but, at the end of the day, we're all still pulling for you.
Right. Jim Rohn, he always says you have to stand guard at the gates of your mind, and you always have to be very careful about what you let into your head. Once it's come into your head, whether you believe it or not, it is permanently etched there. You may not consciously remember, but it is recorded. Everything that you see, everything that you do is recorded in you, because that's the circumstance you've put yourself in. And absolutely. I think that a lot of guys, they don't see a lot of hope, because they're on a certain kind of a trajectory, or they're on a certain path where they don't even see the light themselves. They don't even see the glory that they have. And a lot of people live a zero-sum game. There's only $1 out here, and if I have to fight you to death for it, because if not, there's no more dollar. But that's a scarcity mentality, where I believe that you live in an abundance mentality, where there's more than enough for everybody. There's more than enough money, more than enough success, and more than enough love. How do you feel about that?
I had a consultant tell me one time, it's kind of hard talking to you because you're my competition. And I said, we're not competitors, dude. And he's like, well, we're in the same space. We're both business consultants and leadership consultants. We both do this. And I was like, dude, you can't compete with me. And I said, guess what? I can't compete with you either, because there's only one you and there's only one me, and there's enough work for both of us. And if we're doing good work, guess what? The good Lord and the industry will take care of us. If I'm doing bad work, people are going to go, I don't want to use him. And that word's going to get out. I said, so it isn't about you competing against me. I'm competing against me every single day. And what I've learned is, I used to be all about me. I was in martial arts for years, and I used to fight. I was so cocky and arrogant, but I was good. I was knocking down, a few semi-professional fighters, and that got in my head when I was young, and I was doing that at 17 years old. So I really felt like my trajectory was going into a different direction than what it did. And in that moment, I was always trying to intimidate people, get inside of your head. And it was all about me. There was this narcissistic kind of, it's all about me feeling. And what I realized, it's very alone when you're that way, because all that's there is you. And I look back at my life and I started to see these burnt bridges because I started taking that mentality in every place. I've been married for almost 30 years, and I used to tell my wife all the time, I don't need you. I don't need you. I love you and I want you to be here, but I don't need you. And I'm going to tell you, after almost 30 years of marriage, I need her. I love her. She's my best friend. She's my coworker. She's the vice president of our organization. She's a savage when it comes to marketing and business. But I'm going to tell you, even more than that, she's my best friend. And I need her. And so when you have that stomp on everybody mentality to get there, it leaks out into every area of your life. And it grows bitterness, and that bitterness grows deep roots, man. And that deep roots grows another people. For me, I always end posts with build a legacy that will far surpass your legend. And what I mean by that is simply this: you're building a legacy either way, right? Good or bad. And that stuff perpetuates long after you're dead. And so for me, what I chose to do is draw a line in the sand and just say, hey, that mentality is not about me anymore. If that dollar is there, if you want to kill me to get it, you can have it, because I know, confident in myself, my own abilities, and the network of people that love me, I'll make it through. So if that dollar means so much to you, why don't you go ahead and pick it up?
Right. And usually when they do that, like you see in the movies, is when, the boulder comes and lops their head off, because they don't see the bigger picture. They really don't see the bigger picture. They just fall for the shiny thing, when in reality, the most important things are the most intangible things. It's not a lot of times, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult for people in our professions, because we spend so much time working for our families, but we don't get to spend time with our families. And then when we do, we're all wrung out, and we've spent just weeks of abuse, physical, mental abuse. And it's very difficult. How does someone begin to show love when all they get is put upon all the time? It's very difficult to do that. How would you counsel someone to be a better father when they didn't have a father themselves?
My oldest daughter's 19. And when she was just itty bitty, though, she sat in my lap, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, Papa, how do you know how to be a good papa? And I said, I don't have an answer to that. All I know is what not to do. And don't do that. Right. So for those of you maybe who didn't have that dad, or maybe you did, like myself, and saw some pretty harsh things growing up, you learned what not to do. Right. Don't do that.
Right. That's the first start. Yeah.
That's where it starts. It really does. And there's so much research out there. There's so many things that you can do. But I'm telling you again, basing your decisions on logic truth, understanding, and love is going to go a long way with your kids. And just like I teach people how to lead and manage, we do both sides at Bowman Legacies. We teach a lot of CEOs, hey, look, they've made it, they've got to this point, and all of a sudden they don't know their kid anymore. Their marriage is on the line, and we've done a lot to help patch that up and help kind of bridge that gap. And one of the key things is just learning to listen, truly learning to listen to what your kids need and watching and bridging that gap consistently. And through that consistency, I'm going to tell you right now, that makes all the difference. You know, I had a young man that I counseled for about a year and a half who had worked in the mining industry traveling and lost a marriage out of it, had some drug problems out of it, and got cleaned up from that. But then he had this daughter that he was estranged from who would not take his calls. I said, write her a letter. And she's going to tear it up. I said, write a letter and put a gift card in it. And this is what I want you to write. I've not been the man that you've needed in your life, but I want to be. This isn't a bribe. This is my love and my regret for the time lost. At least spend this gift card. You don't have to read this letter. I'm okay with it. And do that for a month. And all of a sudden, she's like, okay, I'll talk to him. And he called me. He's like, oh my God. He said, we're patching this up. I don't know what to do. She wants to call, but I haven't talked to her in over a year. What do I say? I said, I just want you to say, I love you over and over and over and over again. And I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And I said, see what he goes, that's all you're telling me to do. And I said, yeah. And he did that. And he said, the funny thing was they talked for 2 hours because just those words that came off, your willingness to humble yourself in front of your kid and realize that's not a subordinate, your willingness to humble yourself in front of your spouse. Look, do you want to walk home with them or not? Do you want to stay married or not? We've got to put our pride down and stop focusing on all the things that we're not and start working with what we've got.
Right.
And if we do that with a sense of humility, whether that's at work or whether that's home, that's going to bridge the gap in your life. 99.9% of the time. We make life, we make growing, we make leadership development, personal development, all this stuff way too freaking hard.
Right.
If you can put your ego aside, ego is important, by the way. And I teach people about ego and how to work with their ego and master their ego. But if we can set that aside and our pride down long enough to love someone right where they're at, I'm telling you, dude, it will change the dynamic and direction of your life in a way you never thought possible. And you'll be bringing value in every area of your life consistently. And you'll see your dynamic change. You'll see the view change. It takes consistency and discipline, but it will change.
The number one powerful thing is, again, having love in your heart. And and sometimes it's very difficult. Again, when we have children, it is the number one receptacle, say, for untainted, pure love. Because with any kind of relationship, like I can divorce my wife, but I can never divorce my kid, say, right? That's my blood. That's my flesh, my blood. That will never go away. And imparting love for your fellow man. And I think, and you know what, we did discuss this just prior to air, which is that if you can look at your son or you can look at your child with a certain amount of love and respect and take them as they are, but you have to be able to give that to everyone. And if you can, right, because as Jesus said, you have to love your neighbor. You don't have to like him, but you have to love him, right? But you definitely have to love him. And there are some people
never said you had to like that dog that barks for 16 hours nonstop, right?
Right. And
right?
Also,
you don't have to like your neighbor.
No. And no one wants to pet the dog that's always nipping at their ankles either. So that's something you also want to be very careful how you approach things too. Because if you're not coming correct with someone, you're not going to get what you want, because people have the things that you want in exchange for what you can do. Tell me a little bit about some of the core principles that you live by that you think are indispensable.
I had a guy named Perry Sanders, and I mentioned him a lot in my life, one day stand in front of me, and he said, Michael, I see greatness in you. And I was in a bad way at the time. My wife and I were standing up in an area where people were trying to help us with some things, and I was crying, and I looked at him, and at first I thought he was hitting on me. But through consistency, what I realized was that he was trying to teach me that, hey, I know you've believed you're the giant piece of crap. I know that you've made decisions according to that, but that's not true. And you were lied to, but you've never lived up to your greatness. And that's probably the chief building block, if you will, or principle that I've carried that's helped me go from blue collar, non for profit, back in the blue collar space. No one know me, to have a world wide following, and publishing a book that's had a worldwide following, and keynote speaking at huge events, being in Vegas speaking, being in San Antonio here at the Demolition Association's big keynote, is that I've began to believe in my greatness. Began to, and that's the arrogant statement sometimes when you hear people say stuff like that, right? It just feels so disingenuous and corny, but I'm going to tell you it's so real. Once I realized, hey, you know what? I do have greatness. And I choose to believe the good Lord put it there. You can say the universe, the bananas you ate last night, I don't care. But I've not counseled, I've not led, I've not mentored one person that I couldn't find, oh man, they are phenomenal at X, Y, and Z. Look at what they're able to do at a level I couldn't even touch. Right. And they took that part for granted. So some of you have heard this before. How did you do that? And you're like, oh, it's no big deal. Well, it's a big deal to them because they absolutely couldn't even begin to understand where to start. That's a key component in your greatness. Once you start believing in that, I'm going to tell you, start walking in it with confidence. You start wearing that skin on you. I'm going to tell you, you will be noticed by your supervisors. You're going to be noticed by those that matter. You're going to be noticed by people who are going to want to network with you and guide you and help you move forward in your career. Because sometimes we feel stuck because we have this victim mentality. Oh, the boss doesn't like me. Oh, I work this much. Oh, no one ever sees my efforts. No one ever. But once we throw that away, it's the same with the dollar bill mentality we just talked about. Once you throw that away and get that aside and say, hey, I've got greatness within me, and I'm going to, here's the second one, add value. Add value. So the first principle is recognize your greatness. The second one is add value wherever you go. You walk into a situation, someone's down, add value. You walk into a situation, people need a hand and help, and it's getting in the dirt with them, add value. You're in a situation where traffic is bad and there's been an accident, get out there, call 911, add value. You're at the gas station and you're in a pissed off, bad mood. Traffic's been bad. You've been flipped off 14 times a day, and you walk in front of that person at the gas station behind the counter, and you're good to that person. Add value. And the third principle is do these things consistently. Believe in your greatness and add value wherever you go, and do it consistently. Don't stop. And that, my friends, are the principles I strive to live by, and recognize the fact that you're going to get off that path. You're going to fly the flag of that middle finger in traffic at some point. But get back on the path when you've fallen off.
That's it. Yeah, it's very trying. But like you say, you have to be consistent. And when you're a leader, and again, for those who are not parents, kind of forgive this, but when you're a parent, you don't have a choice. When you're a leader, you don't have a choice. When that phone rings, you don't have a choice.
No.
But there is a choice, a priori choice, which is it going to be a burden and a pain in the ass? Or is it, man, I am so lucky and fortunate that I have the opportunities to try to address these challenges. Ordinary people just see things as problems, but extraordinary people try to see things as challenges to make themselves better, because everything in your life reverberates back to you. You are exactly where you deserve to be, because that's where you are.
Absolutely.
So how could you be anyplace else, right? You can only be where you're at. So, but it doesn't mean that anyone is stuck, because everything is on a continuum. So, but the choice is, do you want to keep going the same way you've been going, or do you want to change for the better? I think a lot of people, though, have a really hard time making, and this I think really is one of the principal things, making the flip from the scarcity to abundance mindset. And I think that sounds very flippant, like you're saying, just very frou-frou and, very Sun Young Moon and here's a flower at the airport, kind of deal. But see, but again, right? So to avoid getting called a kook, I will always revert back to science and nature, because those are not going to lie to you, right? So the very nature of life itself is life. The very essence of life is growth. Is there death? Yes, there is. But I know one thing: there's more life than there's death, because if it was the other way, we wouldn't be here. So that's one of the ways that I can make sense of the world, is that there's more good than bad. Because if there was more bad than good, we just fucking wouldn't be here already. I mean, like, by a long shot by now. So why would I go against things? And they say this in the Tao Te Ching: you do not need a law if you act in accordance and harmony with your surroundings. Then you don't need a law, because you already know what to do. You know what the right thing is to do. You know what the right thing is to say. You don't need anyone to try to tell you that. But it's so difficult for people to actually come to that mindset. But it's the nature of life. So I don't understand why people would do things that are just completely counter to that, because they're making things even more difficult for themselves. And you know what's even worse? It's difficult for other people. One thing that I've always, extreme selfishness is always been a problem for me. And I think that's because we also try to reject things that we had in our past, right? When you see someone that you don't like, it's because you see an aspect in that person, that aspect in yourself that you don't like and you reject. And that's one reason why I don't have a lot of friends, because there's so many habits and attitudes and behaviors that are not life producing. They're not positive. They're not love based. And so I reject all that. But other people want to play a game like that I just refuse to play. And what I really appreciate, Michael, is how you're trying to show people there's a new game to play, a different game that they can play. In summing up, how would you say that someone can come to terms with their most difficult aspects of themselves? That what would you say to someone who's trying to get over that one hump to making a difference to themselves? How can someone believe in themselves?
Get help. Don't go it alone, because you're going to have to face some dark spaces. You're talking to a guy who's been molested growing up. I was beaten growing up. I was physically abused, mentally abused, verbally abused. And so I had a lot of baggage. I just came into life. I came into my marriage with a lot of baggage, and God bless my wife. She's a saint. She deserves a medal. I don't know if there's one out there, but by golly, she deserves it.
Right.
But there was a point in my life where I kind of wanted to do things out on my own and not have any accountability. And I came home to kind of talk to my wife about that. And she said, well, I've got something that I want to tell you too. And I was like, oh, ladies first. And she said, I think I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, well, I need to go to counseling.
Right.
Because I was still throwing guys up against the wall at work. I mean, just days before she said that, I picked a guy up and bounced him off the wall. And what I've come to that place of understanding that, to face those things, I needed someone to help me and to guide me, someone who either been there or had that proper training. You don't climb Kilimanjaro by yourself, right? You don't climb the Alps by yourself. You get a guide. Mount Everest, you get a Sherpa to help you, because those guys who didn't, I'm going to tell you, when you climb Everest, this is what I've been told: on your way up, there are dead bodies to the left and the right everywhere you go, because they can't get them off of the mountain at a certain point. And because people went up there haphazardly or didn't have the proper training, they died and their body stayed up there. So I don't know about you, but I there's been parts of life I haven't loved, but I'm not in a quick way to exit it at any point. So I want a guide. I need help. And I understand that. To be able to ask for help is one of the hardest things in the whole wide world to do. But once you see how fast that gets you somewhere, boy, it becomes addictive. You're like, okay, hey, now I've gotten help. I got counseling over this one thing. I faced this one thing. I went in the darkness after it, faced that dragon. Well, what about this? What about this thing that's been bothering me? What about this thing my wife or my husband keeps mentioning? Why don't I mention it? Why don't I find out where it came from? Let's tear that thing out by the root. And it becomes so exciting that you are willing to put yourself in awkward places where you can hurt so that you can live better and have a more open mind. Too many of us hide from those things and shirk from those things. And that's why we pass off responsibility, or that's why we blame other people for things. And that's why you get that person who is either constantly lying at work or throwing someone else under the bus, is because they're terrified. They're terrified of themselves, let alone you or consequences. And so they'll do anything to get out of it. But once that person comes to the understanding of who they are and how it affects others and why it's important to move forward, they'll become addicted to moving forward and changing. So I'm here to tell you, if you're in that place where you just can't get over that hurdle, whatever it is, get a guide, get help. Don't go it alone, because I've tried that. It's a very scary place. You can end up wallowing in some of the dark recesses of your own mind and really do more damage. Get someone who knows what they're doing. Get someone to guide you. And hey, look, I've had counseling. Most of the people that I coach now are in some form of counseling. We make sure that's one of the things that do, especially if they're facing a hard past. And there's no shame in it. I've met men that were former UFC fighters that went to counseling. I've met people that were some of the toughest people that I've ever met that have been in counseling. There's no shame in it. And it doesn't make you weak because you've done it. It makes you brave because you're saying, hey, I'm drawing a line in the sand here. Enough's enough. Let's make life better. Let's start to smile a little more. Let's start to laugh a little bit more and have some fun, because life's too short to live in misery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really appreciate that message, because so many guys in our industries, they feel like they have to be the alpha. They feel like they have to have all the answers. We have families that are looking up to us to have all the answers. But you're absolutely right. You wouldn't train for a marathon. You wouldn't train at the gym without having a coach. You don't have self-organizing football teams that just sort of spontaneously, like molecules, all come together and go. No, you have to have an organizing principle and a coach to help you with details. So I don't understand why people would be afraid to have a coach to help them with issues and situations that they may not have the tools to deal with. If anything, it's like going to the auto parts store. You need tools. And how can you work on something if you don't have the right tools? And it's incredible. Now, I know that in the oil field, just about everything is a hammer. Whenever you can get a hand on it, it's fine. But we actually need proper tools for this kind of a job. And I really appreciate your bringing this up and highlighting mental health issues and the need. And not mental health like, oh, you're crazy. Like, no, dude. No, you've got a life, a stressful job, stressful coworkers, demanding travel time, not enough sleep, can't eat properly, demands at home.
Yep.
We need organizing principles in our head to help us deal, and not only deal, but to be able to help and add value. Because you can't add value if you're being put upon all the time. There's no space to add value.
You got to fill that tank. And I think one of the reasons, you kind of made a good point there, where you're like, I don't understand. We have a sick fascination with perfection in this country. Mm-hmm. I said this on a podcast last week. I was working with these young men, and they're all single, and they're all in this one little office, and they're all laughing really loud at one of the young men in there. And I was like, hey guys, what's going on? I'm the older guy walking in, and I didn't understand the terminology. And I said, what are y'all laughing at? And they were like, I'll just say the guy's name is Tim. They're like, well, Tim got catfish this weekend. Mm-hmm. And they're all laughing. And I was like, oh, you went fishing this weekend? What happened? Right. And they all look at me like, you dummy. And I was just laughing. I was like, okay, wait a minute. We're not talking about the same thing here, are we?
Right.
And they were like, no, this girl who didn't look the same online showed up, and this is what she actually looked like. She got catfish because, she knew the perfect angles. Right. And the perfect way to look. And in all defense, so did Tim, right? Because
sure.
if you're less than perfect now, something's wrong. If you don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime with your shirt off, you're less than perfect. Well, the fact of the matter is that guy could barely wipe his own butt, and he was more closer to death when he looked that way than he is now. And so what I want to say is perception versus reality is two different things. And we often fear that if you think I'm less than perfect, then I can lose my job. I'll lose this relationship. I'll lose your respect. And we fear that. But the complete opposite is actually true, because most people already know you're not perfect.
That's it. That's it. Most people know. Michael, I want to thank you so much. Actually, you know what? Let me ask you a quick question. Do you, what do you collect? Do you collect anything?
So funny you say it. I collect sheds, actually.
Sheds? Okay. And what do you put in the sheds?
No, not that kind of shed. I actually found a really nice deer shed the other day on our property. So, and I saw the other half of it running away. It was this nice buck, and he had just dropped the shed maybe the day before, and he was still down on our 30 acres. And I picked up his shed, his antler, and then saw the other one. So, but I really don't collect anything other than memories, because for me, I've got this thing. I'm a minimalist. So if I had to get up and take off, I can fit everything that I need in the back of my pickup. As long as my wife and kids are there, I'm good. I'm pretty solid. So I don't really collect anything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But you know what? No, that's very wise, because it's always a pain in the ass when you have to move. You're like, why did I do that? God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so silly. Why? Awesome.
I have all these shoe boxes of these widgets in the ground. What am I going to do with them?
Right. These Matchbox covers. What am I going to do with it? Michael, I want to invite you back. Would you be interested in coming back and talking to us in the future?
Absolutely. I'd be honored.
Wonderful. Well, sir, we are honored to have you, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for sharing your message. And can you tell us, where can people find you?
Absolutely. On LinkedIn, it's Mikel. It's the Norse spelling of Michael, but Mikel Bowman. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not really heavy there. Facebook, but also YouTube is the Legacy Quest YouTube channel. I've got like 300 videos on there. You can see a lot of my journey throughout the years. I also have the Legacy Quest podcast, where just pretty much just me trying to talk to you, uplift you, get your mental state where it needs to be. I've had some really great guests on there, like Vinny Shorman was on there before. So that's a guy I like talking to and hanging out with. So, those are the places that you can find me.
Wonderful.
And on Amazon, Lead from the Middle. My book, Lead from the Middle, is on Amazon. So check that out. I would love it if you guys do that and leave a review. It helps so much.
Yes, it actually does. And I do want to actually share the screen here so that way people can see. Definitely go and get Lead from the Middle. An amazing read. Hope that we teased you enough at the beginning. I mean, it's quite an amazing story. And I would highly recommend to everyone to pick it up and to read it. Michael, you definitely are the man. We appreciate you. And thank you for being on the Oilfield Leader. We'll see you on the next side, brother. Thank you.
10-4. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
The Oilfield Leader podcast is brought to you by executive producer Daniel Corral, executive producer Jim Lynn, executive producer and voice talent, me, Mad Mac, production assistant Caleb Knott. The Oilfield Leader podcast is produced and hosted by Christian Lombardini. Copyright 2023. The Oilfield Leader and Christian Lombardini, all rights reserved. Peace.